We are live on Do Not Talk, and I'm CharLee Simons, and this is my friend Kevin Cooper. Kevin is, his background is fascinating when it comes to politics especially, which is what the show's about, religion and politics, that's what we talk about. You actually worked at the Capitol building for doing what? For how long?
So I was down in Sacramento for about a year and a half. I started out as it's an internship, fellowship type program for Senator Al Alquist from the Bay Area, and then I moved out to become a field rep for him. And I did that while I was in college, just kind of how I was getting through college. And I got a chance to see.
Pretty cool college job, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I got.
Were you interested in politics? Were you studying that in college or anything?
Well, I have an undergraduate degree in political science, and I was studying it. But I always make this joke that the job and time I did in Sacramento convinced me that the old joke about two things you don't ever want to see made: sausage and political bills.
Right.
I became a believer and went back to law enforcement. I ended up in Hayward as a cop. So it tells you I was safer in Hayward as a cop than I was working for a California state city.
Oh, that's funny. It gave you a lot of experience, gave you a lot of insider trading knowledge, and you've, since I've gotten to know you, you have morphed into quite a political activist. Definitely like me. You lean to the right, stand up, sit down, fight.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And you make things happen. I was just talking with someone the other day. As a matter of fact, it was Stand Up Sacramento. Went to one of their meetings.
All right.
Gabrielle and all those folks. And I was telling them about, somebody brought up the whole committees. Which you and I did that whole show about.
I talked to some of them a while ago about that.
Right, with the Board of Supervisors, and they're looking for people to be in these committees. Or if you want something addressed, instead of going to a meeting and complaining and whining and shouting, you just go, I want a committee about this. Put one together.
Yeah,
and
so
elected officials, normally they will. If they don't, then you take it to the next level.
Yeah.
But we covered that. And you want to go back on the page, the Do Not Talk page, Rumble, or wherever, you'll see Kevin Cooper on there, and he spells it all out beautifully.
Oh, thank you.
But we're talking about something different here. We just came out of the midterm elections. The primaries were a dismal failure in my mind when it came to Republicans even showing up to vote, and Christians especially not even showing up in the primaries. Did they do any better in the midterms?
So, I think one of my weaknesses is I tend to be super focused locally. I mean, when I take a look at the national issues,
I'm talking California.
Oh, in California?
Yeah.
I think that, I don't know that we always show up. And part of the reason, I think, is because we want to be nice. We don't like combat, verbal combat. We don't like disagreements. We want to have peace. And the other side wants something, and they continue to push. And so I think that was one of the things that I kind of always see. And sometimes I just maybe always see that because I'm kind of bummed about the fact that we're not a little bit more vocal. This election, I think, was a good example where there's a candidate here locally, Mr. Oliver, that was very vocal, and people took sort of, they were very uncomfortable with it. And I think part of the challenge I had as I watched the different debates, there's a lot of things going on in the city that we need to be able to stand up and say no about. And people seem to be really uncomfortable about it.
Which is bizarre to me. I mean, absolutely bizarre to me, especially after what we saw in schools over the past 2 years. Schools alone. And then government not doing anything to remedy it or to even step in and go, well, hey, wait a minute. Everybody was hunkered down and scared and nobody stood up. And as far as you were referencing how we don't speak up, we were labeled by Richard Nixon as the silent majority.
Yeah.
Well, we found our voice. And a whole lot of us are no longer silent. And we're not going to sit there and take it. And the left is not used to that and does not like it. And they fight dirty. They fight real dirty.
Well, not only is the left not used to it, but a lot of people in local politics, I've had a lot of people tell me that, I'm a jerk or I'm loud or whatever. And a lot of them say that, we just want peace, and they don't understand how that can't happen. And I'm trying to be as clear as I can. That can't happen because other people want something, and when you don't give it to them, there's a disagreement, and it gets pretty nasty, whether it's local teachers who have pushed on the Rockland Unified School Board to really, basically the budget has been in bad shape. I always am careful about how I critique the
Because
Rockland
people are
School
pulling the
Board.
kids out of public schools for one thing.
Well, so Rockland School Board,
They're real short of students,
yeah, they've had a lot of people leaving.
and rightly so.
I think so, but I mean, I think the thing is that we worked very hard over the last couple of years to put in basically a slate of new people into the school district here in Rockland, and
Really
those
good.
people are working 20 hours a week, literally,
Really good.
not figuratively.
Yeah,
They're
and they
working very
really
hard.
don't get paid for it.
No, they don't get paid for it. And they get a lot of abuse from the teachers union and other people. But I think that at the end of the day, we are rebuilding the school.
And remember these teachers unions and the teachers as well, who are all about we don't care what parents say. We're going to teach what we know and we think and we believe they need to learn, despite what we want as parents. So I'm grouping those teachers in with the unions, and that they get paid to do this. They get paid to be obnoxious. They get paid to strike. They get paid to be in your face. They get paid to constantly push. And we get to a point like, I'm too busy working. Yeah, there's resignation that comes in, isn't there?
You get tired. I mean, so one of the things that happened, it's interesting you pointed it out. So there's about 900 teachers in the Rockland School Board or school district. And when COVID hit, there was pressure from the state to get all the teachers vaccinated. And if you weren't vaccinated as a teacher, you had this multi-part protocol you had to go through to be checked to make sure every week or a couple of days that you didn't have COVID. And so there are 600 teachers, I guess, that got vaccinated roughly, and 300 that didn't. And so as that pressure came down, I ended up writing that letter I told you about. I wrote it. I sent one letter to the president of Kaiser, president of Sutter, to all the county board directors, all the city council folks, and the school board, and said, look, this virus is an emergency use authorized product. It's designed under a situation where the emergency use authorization removes liability for the folks that actually designed it. We cannot force people to take something under that EUS production motion, because if it turns out there's something wrong, you're liable as the district. And not only that, where are you going to get rid of? You're not going to find 300 teachers. So I went in, sort of made a ruckus about that, got in a shouting match with the union, a bunch of other people. So,
Oh, I wish I could have been there.
yeah, I wish
I would have paid to see that show.
Well, so at the end of the day,
He's real quiet now, but he can get loud.
yeah, we don't want to bring that up. At the end of the day, one of the things I saw that really, in retrospect, has made me very frustrated was that this election cycle, we had a debate essentially where the 6 folks that were running for the 3 open seats for Rockland School Board debated, and one of the big issues was the book banning. Remember, we talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually an 8-minute slice that we'll include in this production, so you guys could do that. And
Yeah.
during that discussion, each one of the candidates had 2 minutes to discuss why they thought the book should be banned or not banned. And it's sort of an unfair categorization of calling it a book ban, because we're just not buying the books. It's not like we're getting rid of the books or burning them or anything. But the books had a lot of questionable things in them.
Heck yeah. And I actually have already run that. I aired that when I had Carrie Hamilton on.
Right.
We walked through it and got the teacher who was going, every book is sacred and every child should have every access to every piece of pornographic filth that they want to check out. And then the responses, starting with Derek Counter, and then Carrie. So yeah, we did air that, but I'm glad to air it again.
Well, and the part
It was
that
good. They were strong.
Yeah, well, the part that I'm super,
Unfortunately, she didn't win, by the way.
Yeah.
Which I want to get to.
Yeah, that was a sad thing.
Yeah.
But Rick Miller, who it appears will not be returning to the board, so have some time to do some other stuff.
God.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lord.
He makes a comment.
He's a bad man to have on a school board, my humble opinion.
He makes a comment where he basically says that, look, the books that are in the library were all purchased by librarians who are part of the Rockland School District system. This is not a state question. This is a Rockland Unified School District has librarians who go through this process to get books. And if the books have gone through the process, everything's fine. And that was sort of his 2-minute comment. Then Tiffany Sethoff, Trustee Sethoff, responds saying, hey, that's not the whole story. Parents weren't included, lots of other challenges happened, and you're basically not telling the truth. Now, as I went around the city and I pointed out that Rick Miller was on essentially record lying to people, everybody thought that was okay because Rick's a nice guy. And one of the things I always say to people is Rick and some of the people that I disagree with politically, they're nice people. If I lived next to them, I'd probably let them borrow my lawnmower. I just don't want them on the board because in this case, one of the books that they wanted to bring in had, it was a cartoon book, kind of an anime style, I guess, but it had sex in it. And you're like...
And actual depictions of sexual acts.
Which I don't think...
Homosexual and heterosexual.
Kids don't need any more opportunities for sex. We got the Kardashians and 1,000 things on YouTube.
Good point.
The last thing we need is more sexualization for our kids. And so, but what was astonishing to me is a bunch of people were unglued when other people running for other offices in Rockland said, oh, that's corrupt or this is wrong. I got on and pointed out that I didn't think the city council did anywhere near the level of analysis they needed to do to decide for us not to go after PG&E and basically buy our electrical system from PG&E. And we were considered vitriolic, but I never lied to anybody. And so when people...
This would have been a great thing, by the way, for Placer County in general. SMUD has been very effective for Sacramento County, as has been very much more efficient than PG&E at getting power and electricity to their residents. And you can opt not to use SMUD. You can stick with PG&E if you want. But, and I don't want to jump ahead because I do want to talk about Matthew Oliver.
Okay.
I know Matthew Oliver was in favor of going, we need to have our own municipal utilities district here.
Yeah.
We don't need PG&E here anymore telling us what to do and bossing us around.
Well, see, people put the blame on PG&E, but we haven't really talked about this, so we'll see if I get pulled back on the reservation.
I know it's very government controlled. I know
Well,
that.
so the other thing is I spent about 7 years working for the PG&E of Louisiana.
It's also filthy waste.
And I was the director of what's called the wires acquisition team. So we'd go out and buy city wires, just like Rockland's. And
wires like copper?
No, the power lines.
Oh, got it.
So the transmission, distribution, transformers, all.
So you got experience with it.
I know how they're valued.
Mm-hmm.
So what made me super frustrated about it is that the valuation that the city put together was basically a legal evaluation as opposed to a financial valuation. And the reason why that's important is because everybody makes PG&E to be the bad guy, but you understand that PG&E has 3 or 4 state entities that regulate them.
Oh, I know. And every one of them is kind of like it's going to be our way or the highway. But the other folks just said that we have to do it this way. Yeah, and then it's ridiculous, a horrible waste, and what winds up being done is nothing. And people have died because of their lack of any kind of future and forward planning with burying power lines and so on. People have died. Towns have been destroyed.
Hold on. So they have a plan. But here's the thing. So right now, everyone in California is very concerned about global warming. So what we're doing is we're purchasing a global warming defeating asset, say a wind turbine or a solar unit.
Yeah, the giant bird killers. Yeah.
Well, but then we're also purchasing another asset, basically a turbine or something, because when the wind stops or the sun stops, you have to have some other asset to generate it. So from a cost perspective, the money that you would spend on right-of-way clearing and all that stuff, or maintaining your wires so that they don't start fires, is being spent in all these other areas. PG&E people pay some of the highest rates in the nation.
And they also pay some of the highest wages to their employees and the union and everything else.
I'm not going to touch that issue. But
I will.
The big thing is when you yell at PG&E...
It's not sustainable.
Well, it's not sustainable because PG&E is being told to do all these things that because of the long distances in their service territory, it's almost impossible to do for a normal price. So what we've got is
That's why you have SoCal Edison. I mean, it's not like PG&E's.
They're not as wide. Their service area isn't as diverse, and it sure as heck doesn't have as many forests. I mean, PG&E runs from San Francisco all the way to the border, right?
Yeah.
Or even south of San Francisco.
Well, I was going to say it's further south than that, yeah.
But
PG&E's in Fresno.
Yeah, right. So they have a much more expansive, and so if they've got to take and basically bring you renewable power, which will be intermittent, and then at the same time has to buy normal power, Sorry, I need little dolls or something, little thing. It's super expensive. It's like, imagine owning 2 cars, but only driving one part time, and you have to go drive the other one. But you got to make payments on both. But you really only need 1 car. So where normal, other states, their money goes into right-of-way clearing, so they don't have forest fires.
Well, I think what I'm getting to though is, and I know we're off topic, way from the direction you were heading.
I'm trying to defend Matthew Oliver's request for us to get on to PG&E.
I
That's
think,
what I was really trying to do.
I've made it clear that I'm a fan of Matthew Oliver's idea. I think it's fantastic.
It's one we need to talk about because costs
Gloucester
are
needs its own municipal utilities district.
Actually, it would be great if the entire county did it because we are
saying.
kind of spread out. Hey, listen, so you know how you do that, right? We get a committee, we get some people.
There's the committee. There it is.
And we say, look,
We'll cover that. We'll cover
forward.
that. So Matthew Oliver, we were talking about school board members. Why did Kerry Hamilton? There seems that something very dirty happened, and this is what I want you to talk about because I already know. You told me, and it just really made me angry. There were some very dirty dealings by Republicans who were going to teach these uppity newcomers a lesson.
So basically,
that's how it came across to me. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, so as we kind of move through the issues, if we take a look at Rick Miller being super nice, but basically telling a lie to everybody.
You know who else was super nice? Al Capone. They loved him in Chicago. He built all these orphanages. Of course, nobody said he's probably the one that created most of the orphans.
Yeah, that's a
But he was so nice.
Well, and so
I'm just saying.
I'm not disputing it. I'm not
saying what's his face. I won't even say his name is Al Capone, but you get what I'm saying. It's easy for people to go, well, they're really nice. I'm going to vote for them because they had a nice smile. Shut up. Stop doing that.
Well, I mean, I think it's time for us to call people out. And so, luckily or happily, I don't think Rick's going to get reinstalled as a trustee, and I think that's good for the city again. I'm sure Rick's a nice guy, but I just don't want him on the board. But as we move through that issue, what ended up happening is basically, Mr. Oliver ran for city council, and several people on the current city council board went to people on the school board and said, if you endorse Matthew Oliver, we will not endorse you. So that triggered a bunch of people within the Republican Central Committee to say, hey, that's not cool because you guys are Republicans, and Matthew Oliver was an endorsed Republican. So there was a movement to get the initial people who had made that accusation or that movement had their endorsements pulled. And that became the bigger issue.
So these are Republicans telling Republicans, if you vote for that Republican or endorse that Republican, we're going to support you as Republicans, even though you're a Republican.
That is pretty much the way it happened. It's important for everybody in town to take a deep breath and understand.
You named names, too, when you and I were talking about it.
I did. You know some of them. I'm not so sure it's important that we need to name names as much as
I think we do. I think they need to be called out. Did anyone of them win their elections? Or held their office?
They did hold office. Some of them weren't running. So I think that the thing that I want people in Rockland to understand...
Sick of this crap. I'm really sick of it.
...is that the $100 million a year school budget and the $100 million a year city budget for the city of Rockland, when combined with the $1 billion a year budget that the county has, will impact you far more than any state or federal program. Go and learn who's on your city council, on your school board, who's down at the county, and what they're spending their money on. Because it's a lot of money. And there's a lot of things that money is doing, sometimes efficiently, sometimes not so efficiently. Like I said, what would have happened had the Rockland School Board decided, because of pressure from the state, to go ahead and lay off those 300 teachers? And my comment is that the city council and the county needed to stand with the school board trustees and say, you're not laying these teachers off. We don't know what we're going to do. We don't have a solution, but we're going to figure one out. And rather than focus on the mundane day-to-day activities, COVID and other things call us to be creative and figure out how to spend some of that money, whether it's $1 million on a lawsuit or something, to fight back. And everybody was uncomfortable about that. When I went down and talked to the county and said, hey, county supervisors, you guys need to take a stand on this, there was no response. And I'm not picking on anybody specifically as much as I am saying as a community, we're going to have to be a lot tougher on these issues or we're going to get rolled over.
Which is what they've gotten nice and comfortable with.
I think so.
Not being challenged, not having people show up. Oh, okay, everybody got all worked up during the whole mask thing and the kids and the sexualization of children, but they'll calm down and forget about it. And unfortunately, they're right.
I think
People will calm down and forget about it, and they'll go back to status quo as soon as their mama bears, calm down a little bit. We'll placate. We'll give you this, and we'll take that one book out. Okay.
Well, everybody's busy.
Back to doing what we want to do.
Everybody wants to do Christmas, and everybody wants to do summer vacation. But
I don't blame people.
Day, what is going to happen is we're going to start seeing the interest rates go up, and we're going to see a lot of government programs that have to get cut as interest payments explode.
There it is.
And
all
the people that fought during COVID was just sort of a warm up, basically, because right now the federal government has $5 trillion in income and $6 trillion in spending, so that's $1 trillion that isn't funded. We got $30 trillion in debt, and when the interest rate goes from 2 to 7 or 2 to 5, it's going to force the federal government to either raise taxes or cut programs. And that's coming in 2023, 2024.
Kevin Cooper here is a Placer County guy and is most involved. He believes, like our friend Jason Wedge and others, that you got to act locally and impact nationally. And I've come to realize that's absolutely right. We can't be waiting for some, finely coiffed blonde-haired dude riding in on a white steed.
No one is going to save us.
To rescue the
Charlie's
country.
Trying to get people to save us. Watch Charlie talk about the stuff he's talking about and send letters into your local representatives and say, Charlie was thinking maybe this might be something we should talk about.
Right.
I may not always be right, but we got to start the conversations because
we have to, from this point forward, we can't go backwards. We at least have to pay attention to school boards and the people who are running for school board, but the media's not giving them any attention. I've tried. I literally had a couple of the people say no to me. 2 different school districts who are like us, at least like Kevin and me, conservative-minded Christians, want good things taught to children, not theory and not critical race theory.
Kids get up in India and China, and they're learning how to do calculus. They're learning how to write. They're learning how to do business things. And if we want our kids to have the same standard of living that we had, our kids have to be stronger.
But we have to be more diligent with supporting school board members. Definitely. I was surprised that Carrie Hamilton did not win.
I was really sad.
I thought she was fantastic. Yeah. How did she not? Especially when Derek Counter and Tiffany Sadoff, both very strong. Thank God they got in with the Rockland School Board.
It was close for Derek.
It shouldn't have been close for Derek. That's the weirdest thing to me. How can it even be close?
Well, so I'll put up the post.
You and I both know, by the way. I already know. I rarely ask you a question that I don't know the answer to.
It's maneuvering for the names. I think the thing that I would say is I put up a Excel table with the numbers for each day as the votes were released, and what you saw was that in some races, the fact that Republicans voted more on the day of meant that the votes for conservative folks were delayed in later releases, but basically because some members of the Rockland City Council basically said that people that supported Matthew Oliver were not worthy. We basically almost had Derek Counter not make it onto the Rockland School Board, and Rick Miller lost by 1,500 votes.
That was it.
It was really tight.
Why? After everything that we went through for 2 years, why would anybody vote for that goofball?
Well, and I think that the big question is what's most important? Is it important for us to defend ourselves from someone who says we're acting corrupt as a city council, and that's a personal issue where you're trying to protect your political path, I guess, or the thing that impacts, 16,000, 13,000 kids in the city, where we need the best, strongest people on that board because they're working very hard, not only against the state, but against the local unions. And so in my opinion, frankly, Bill Halden and Ken Broadway, they made a choice. And I think we need to talk about that as a community. I've always said, I think Bill's a great guy. I just don't think that that was the appropriate choice for the city. And I know that Kim Broadway had a lot to say about that too. And we have to talk about this as a community. So I'm going down to the Republican Central Committee and I'm pointing out that at the end of the day, if the Republican Central Committee gives an endorsement to somebody and that person turns around and endorses someone who is not a Republican, their endorsement needs to be pulled. And there's a lot of questions about whether or not that was fair or right. Mr. Bass made comments that that was bullying, but the story that wasn't ever released was that, again, Ken Broadway and Bill Halpin and some others basically said, hey, if you support Matthew Oliver, we're going to pull our endorsements. And it wasn't talked about in the community.
And why would they be so dead set against Matthew Oliver winning when they are supposed to be Republicans as well?
I'm not going to get into the guessing game, right? I don't know people's intentions, and I don't know.
I think I have an idea.
Ken, Charlie, you're far more connected with those guys, Ken and Bill and those guys than I am. I'm watching from afar. I think the big issue is that we as a city, we're going to have to stand up more. And we have to know.
But we did. We had people who stood up more, and they didn't win.
Well,
Matthew Oliver is a great example.
Matthew stood up, but the rest. So your leaders in a republic and democratic system are only as strong as your voters. And so the fact that voters were saying, well, Matthew might be a bit bombastic and he's picking on them because of the PG&E thing. I had people tell me that I was totally wrong about PG&E who don't know anything about the electrical distribution system or costs or any of that, and they're blaming PG&E.
I like it because it's easy to spell.
Well,
PG. How do you make an N?
Voice acting, he does that too. The big thing is that people don't understand where the conflicts are coming, and they're looking at Sacramento or looking at the federal government. It's like, look, at the end of the day, a portion of the reason that nobody wants to go up, nobody normally wants to go up against PG&E is if you just try and take your wires out of PG&E's network, they spend a lot of money to get you unelected. They will come after you and basically float money against you. And
next thing you know, there's 4 signs to every Matthew Oliver sign for his opponent, and I saw a lot of that.
I don't think PG&E put money into David Bass's. I would not say that. I don't want to interpret that way. But what I would say is I think people were scared that that could happen if Matthew was elected. Because as a city, we have to ask ourselves, where are PG&E's rates going? Well, so long as they have to pursue a 100% renewable strategy, those rates are going to continue to go up. Yeah. And we can't continue to afford that.
No.
Right? And we have to decide what we're going to do about it. And so if we were to float $100 million or $200 million to buy our wires back, which some people say isn't enough, and I say it's all in the negotiation, but at least we should have a good, robust discussion and have a committee where we can talk about it from more than just a legal angle, that all that stuff's important and needs to be on the table. It totally impacts the ability for us to have our way of life in the county, because at the end of the day, so much of the kind of businesses you can bring to a place has to do with the power quality and the cost. And if we want to have some distributed ecosystem where we're not just having software and services.
So you really think that because Matthew Oliver was saying we need our own municipal utilities district, and we'll start with Rockland and then hopefully go countywide from there, you're thinking that there are elected officials who are like, oh shoot, I don't want those big PG&E guns coming after me.
I think it's possible. I mean,
really? They're that weak.
Well, I'm not going to say they're weak. I'm going to say
that their priorities are just dead.
Charlie provides the commentary. I do the analysis. The big thing is that I think that they were not happy with being told that they were wrong or that they missed things. I know I took a lot of heat when I posted on Facebook. I had several people call me and say that I was a jerk because I said that the analysis that they presented was based on legal information and not financial information. It was so good up till now. And so I think that what we have to as a community is to get our head wrapped around how are we going to take time as a community to understand what's going on. And I give a lot of props to people like Wendy Beal and the moms who have just come untethered on the school stuff.
Thank God. Thank God for Mama Bears.
God bless Wendy and their work.
Oh, no doubt. Nicole, all of them.
Continue, Heidi Hall, who ran in Roseville. Tiffany and Rochelle and there's so many people, you cannot thank them. I feel like one of those people, it's like, I'm going to thank you for my Oscar, I want to thank God, and I'm going to go on, be like my Stevie Wonder thing.
The bottom line
Thank
is,
everybody.
even if California didn't flip red, which so many of us were, I was seriously one of those things, naively
You had to be naive.
naively thinking,
Very hopeful.
maybe we've had enough. Maybe the left is finally going to go, oh no. Yeah, if nothing else, just stay home. Don't vote and we'll show up. I was really believing that we had a shot at that because of what a train wreck this state is on and this country in general. I really thought. I did. I'm a sucker. I try to stay positive all the time, and I thought, yes, this is
The
going
one
to be
thing
it.
is
It didn't happen.
Yeah, no.
Bottom line, it didn't happen. Thank you, Kevin Kiley. Glad he won. Barely.
Patterson, yeah.
And Joe Patterson, that's right. There's not the red wave, though, in California. A lot of people were thinking it's finally going to happen because people have had enough. And every time I hear somebody say, well, it's because they haven't felt enough pain. I don't think that's it. I think they know where their phony baloney jobs are funded from. We have so many state employees, especially in this area, and they're in the unions, state employee unions, which I think is a huge conflict of interest. But the point is, they're going to keep voting for anyone that promises to keep the nice, cushy gigs coming.
Well, I mean, I would say the following. I think that when we have 7%, when I believe that probably early next year, I was off a little bit. I thought we'd have 7% for 700 credit to get a home loan. I thought we'd have 7% home loans by December, and I was close. I think we're like at 5.5%, 6% right now. That's only going to go up because of the structural problem of having a federal budget that's $6 trillion and taxes that are $5 trillion. And then
They've been
$30
kept
trillion
artificially low for
a very long time.
over a decade.
And so as that changes, costs are going to go up, and people are going to have to make real hardcore choices. And see, in Rockland, we're relatively wealthy. It'd be interesting to take your show on the road to Natomas or any of these other places and ask them, hey, how are you doing? Because that's not in the news right now. When's the last time you saw someone get on the news and say, hi, my name is Joe, and I work over here at the auto mechanic place, and my wife and I can't make things work? You saw that a
Well,
lot.
if there was a Republican in office, or this is a Republican-run state, majority state, you'd see all kinds of that on the news.
Right. That's
But
exactly my point.
they're not going to put people, po folk like me on.
Well, but maybe your show. We know this guy, CharLee Simons. He has this really great podcast, and we maybe want to go on the road and ask those people, hey, how are you doing under the great Biden economic strategy?
Yeah.
And are you okay?
How's that Build Back Better going for you?
How are you feeling about China building a coal plant every couple of months, and we're not allowed to build them, so they have super cheap power and they have industry and we don't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's amazing. Rockland used to have a lot of lumber mills in town, and those have all been kind of pushed out. I think the last one shut down last year. But those were good jobs.
It's, of course, yes, you're right. And usually union. All right. We'll wrap it up on this, because I know you got things to do and so on and so forth. But,
And thank you for this time. I really appreciate it.
oh, my pleasure. Anytime. I love anybody who strategizes and knows more of the insider stuff than I do. I'll listen, because I'm learning. But I can tell you everything about my 1958 Ford Thunderbird, but I don't know how it works out. It's going to be a Ryan Ronco is the head of registrar of voters.
Yeah, for County.
And for Placer County, where you are, where your main focus is, and your work with Board of Supervisors and so on, doing good things, trying to actually make things happen, doing it the way he knows how it can be done to make it much more effective, and will give us information too. Get in touch with him. Find out how to send out these postcards and everything. They're already done. You just got to put a stamp on it and mail it. Do we have free and fair elections? I mean, Dr. Douglas Frank was just here recently. I love that guy. He was at Epic Bible College. He is breaking down how these machines, and I've talked with Ryan Ronco about this before. I like him. I like Ryan. I think he's got a good heart. I don't know him all that well. We don't hang. But I've had him on my show a couple of times when I was on the radio. The point is, though, he swears up and down, oh no, those machines are not connected to the internet. Well, every single one of those machines have a modem in them.
Well,
and everything is hackable.
so
And this is happening. And he goes, well, we even recheck it, and we check the signatures. So that's great that you check and double check. But if you've got a machine in there that ultimately, when it sends in the results, are going to be skewed, can you trust them?
I mean, so I have about 20 years in high tech, and I used to do forecasting for a really big company, billions of dollars of revenue. And this is what I am prepared to say. I don't know what goes on in Placer County from a vote machines thing. I'm doing enough to kind of stay on top of the school board and understand what's going on in city council. What I would say is Dominion machines scare me because in other jurisdictions they are equipped with Wi-Fi. I don't know if they are here in Placer County. Some jurisdictions don't put that piece of hardware on their boxes. But setting it all aside, mathematically it's almost impossible for me to understand the 2020 election because of, I follow this election wizard. I'm sure everybody out there is following these different groups. And mathematically it just doesn't make any sense. And what I think we're going to find out now that Twitter is kind of opened up is there's probably other threads that people are going to pull on. If you think about it, it's been a long ride since President Trump was elected 6-7 years ago. And what is going on, in my opinion, is that we are being forced to learn how to make political connections locally. Because at the end of the day, people think that politics is about yelling at Washington or yelling at Sacramento, and it's not. It's about the kinds of things you and I are doing here. It's the kind of things that Moms for Liberty or the Children's Health Defense Network and all these different groups are doing. Pastor Barrett, Boomer Barrett's doing great stuff. Matthew Oliver.
Bennett?
Pastor Bennett. And what is going on is these people are reaching out to the people who are watching your show and saying, let's meet, let's have a cup of coffee, and this is something I want you to think about. And so many times we focus on the big issues in Sacramento, and I say that's not the way political parties are made, because I got to trust you. I got to trust the people I'm talking with. I have to trust to share this with you and not think that because I'm saying the PG&E shouldn't be our wires provider, that I'm out to get you or that I'm out to hurt you or that I'm crazy. And that's why those committees are super important, because you go into them, and yeah, there's always going to be people that show up and they're angry. And we need to be okay with that, because as we've seen with the Democrats, they come in and they're angry. And we have to be able to accept everybody's opinion and maybe occasionally let them blow off some steam, right? I mean, my big joke when I asked for the county to put together a committee on COVID, I said, look, I'll pay for I'll give you $1,000 to cover the cops for the first night, because there's going to be crazy people that are coming. Going to be people that are going to yell, and they probably need to yell. Blow off a little bit of steam. Sit them in the corner. Tell them to be quiet, right? Maybe we pray for them. Jesus didn't tell you to only go talk with the happy, nice, flower-carrying people. We got to go out and we got to deal with the crazy person who maybe has problems and the person that's beat down. And a lot of times those are your neighbors. Yeah. Those are the people you see on the way to your office.
Right.
And that's the key. And so the idea that we would label Matthew Oliver as bad or bombastic, when Rick Miller got on TV there on the board and said, everything's fine, the librarians in Rockland did everything right. And then Ms. Sarnoff says, oh no, it didn't happen that way. And nobody in the community said, well, Rick just lied to everybody. He's well-spoken, and like I said, he's a nice guy. I'm sure that if Rick was my neighbor, I would say great things about him and have no problem letting him borrow my lawnmower, but I don't want him making decisions in our school district.
Right.
And for those of you that think I'm wrong, you know where I live. I get hate mail all the time. Keep it coming. It makes me laugh.
It makes me laugh.
I'm 3 blocks from the police department, and those guys know me because I used to be a cop, and we all get together occasionally for beers, and they laugh too.
Anybody wants to get a hold of you, where do they find you?
So I'm on Facebook.
Just any questions or comments?
Yeah, or they can email me at
get involved with this card mailing setup he's got going on, trying to get a committee, trying to get a board of supervisors in Placer County to put together a committee to study why are we still doing these COVID boards. Why? Again, we covered all this in the show, so I'm not going to redo it, but please get in touch with Kevin.
Thank you, Charlie.
Ask about that. If nothing else, get involved with that, because it's easy. He's already done the work. Yeah. He's got the cards. He can't be mailing them all out, though. He's got to have somebody else signing them.
Be fraud.
That'd be fraud.
Basically, what we're asking people to do is to fill out a card and send it to the board supervisor saying, let's create a committee. And the idea behind the committee is that if you cities, counties, school boards have committees, and the goal behind the committees is to provide a place for people to come talk. So the idea is we got to talk about COVID. It was a terrible, terrible thing in the city, in the county. We spent money on it, and nobody really understands what's going on. Nobody understood what was going on when it happened. Nobody understands what's still going on. We have a COVID dashboard that's telling everybody all this stuff about how people are dying from COVID. And what
But it's not true.
I'm not going to say that. But what I am going to say is that we need to have a committee to talk about it because we're spending money. And if we can have a committee on cemeteries, on parks and rec, on films in the county, we can have a committee for a year. I think Jason Wedge and
On
some
this
people
COVID
would be a
dashboard.
great person to be on that committee and say, look, what's going on with the money the county is spending? Where are the real deaths? And what are some of the other stories? Because right now, all we're getting is a thin slice of information. We're not seeing the whole picture. I got really mad at the city. Some people yelled at me and I yelled back. We had 3 or 4 kids in the city during the COVID lockdown that committed suicide, some of whom I knew. And you could not start that discussion because as soon as you started talking about, well, they committed suicide because they weren't going to school, the attack was, you don't care about the people that are getting COVID. I said, I'm not saying I don't care about them. What I'm saying is everyone is equal. Every life is important. And we need to talk. And you couldn't even get the conversation started. I had people who are elected officials in the region tell me initially that I was a jerk, I didn't get the vaccine, and then I was talking up, and then later on they're like, oh wow, I got the vaccine and I feel kind of foolish. That is out there, and we need to own it as a city and a county and an area and talk about this because that's how you gain trust. Jesus went into the square.
Love it.
Paul went into places like Ephesus, and he started these discussions, and they didn't always go well. Paul got beat.
Yeah.
And until
Left for dead one time.
until Christians are willing to understand that that level of communication is required, a lot of these issues are going to stay underneath the rocks. And that's why I love people like Wendy and the rest of the folks that are standing up. They may not always be the smoothest person talking. I mean, Lord knows I'm not. You know, Wendy's very smooth. All these people are working really hard. But we've got to listen and talk and not just live in our little happy little place in Placer County.
So where do we find you?
It's
How do we get in touch with you?
cooperperforms@gmail.com. That's
Spell
one
it.
way. COPER, performs, PERFORMS.
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 Performance. Cooper
Yeah.
performs.
At gmail.com.
Gmail.
And, you know, I'm on Facebook, and I'm sure that if you ping CharLee, CharLee will connect us. Because
I
Charlie's
would
a good guy.
absolutely be glad
I'm
to.
super
Unless
thankful
there's
for this
some-
guy. He continues to bring up local issues that people need to talk about.
Nobody else in the media is.
And everybody else is telling you everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Inflation is transitory.
Yeah, don't forget that. And the southern border secure.
Once you get the vaccine, everything will be fine.
Thank you, Kevin.
God bless you, man.
Awesome. And he does, and he will. I'm CharLee Simons. This is Do Not Talk.